Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Really appreciate you joining us today for what I guess qualifies as a double episode. Make sure to check out all of our companion content. You can find it at 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com, where we've got stories and columns and videos from our YouTube channel and also all of the other podcasts in our network, including 3 yards per carry, which is going strong up through the NFL draft and what the Dolphins are going to do at quarterback and much, much more. Also, check out our new sponsors. We've been really encouraged by the way the community has come out and supported us. We are a South Florida-based operation, and so we've been bringing in South Florida businesses, a lot of them new businesses, and one of them is really appropriate for today's time. So make sure that you listen to this. It's called Making America Clean Again, MACA, and it's a division of Greenview Construction. And what do they do? Well, they hold certificates in bacterial, viral, fungi, mold cleaning treatments. That's right. They handle residential and commercial projects. So whether it's a home or a business, they can come out and help you. And basically what they do is they do professional cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, and sterilization for a wide range of those projects. It can be overnight, it can be permanent, and you can find them at macainc.net. That's MACA Inc.net or 855-561-6653. Now, why do you want this? Because after this scourge is gone, after the coronavirus crisis has passed, and that'll happen eventually, and businesses start going back to work, people are going to be much more discriminate in terms of where they go. They want to make sure that they're going to a place that is clean, that is sanitized. If you can put that certificate up, that's going to help quite a bit. So again, reach out, macainc.net, macainc.net, or 855-561-6653. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, aka Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to the 5 on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Again, I'm Ethan Skolnick. We've got a full crew here tonight, but before we get to it, I want to explain what we've been doing. This is episode 5 of a 5-part series. We've been looking for things to fill the coronavirus break, and we found this, and it does seem like people have been into it. The first episode was myself and Greg Sylvander. You know him as Lefty Leif. He's kind of the old head of the Miami Heat beat guys, and we went through and chose the 29, in our view, most impactful players in Miami Heat history based on their careers here. So Gary Payton made the list, but not based on what he did in Seattle or Milwaukee or Boston, but what he did here. Same for Ray Allen, same for Shaquille O'Neal, etc. Then once we did that, we put to a poll 4 players that Leif and I could not decide upon. Josh Richardson won that Twitter poll and became the 30th player. Then we had an episode, myself, Alphonse, Sidney, and Alex Toledo, who are here tonight, basically breaking down who we were going to pick. The next episode, we picked the starters. Alf got trounced. And then in the next episode, we picked the reserves, and Alex got trounced. So now this is episode 5.
I mean, putting your finger on the scale, man.
No, right? Come on.
Now this is episode
Not
5.
to mention, you talked about Gary Payton's career in Milwaukee and Boston, which I don't remember that.
Seattle. I mentioned Seattle, too. Seattle. He was in Seattle.
You said Milwaukee and Boston for Gary
He was
Payton?
also in Milwaukee and Boston. He was traded for Ray Allen. I mean, he played in all 3 of those places.
Forget the Lakers.
A lot of people forgot the Lakers. All right, but we have brought in now, we've gone to the opposite coast. We've brought in the choices here. You know, it's funny. After I chose Sedano for this, I had a conversation with Eric Reed, and I'm thinking, wow, he would have been good for this too. After all, he was there for every single one of these players. But I asked Eric, and Eric said, George will be a fine replacement. And I agree with that. So, George, we appreciate you joining us. You are going to pick the best team out of the 3 of us. And, of course, it's going to be mine. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here, too. By the way, Gary Payton was pretty good in Milwaukee, even though he was only there for like 28 games or something like that.
Correct. And he was traded. Did you guys know that, right? He was traded for Ray Allen. The 2 of them.
No, but yeah, but I mean, when you talk about Ray Allen, not me. I'm sorry. Now I'm doing what you're doing. When you talk about Gary Payton, it's Seattle, and then that's it, and Miami, and then
I
and maybe a
understand.
little bit.
Yeah,
of
no, he definitely was not. He wasn't like Gary Payton in Milwaukee. He was fine in Milwaukee. He was not great with the Lakers. He was just okay. And then he was not great with Boston before he got to Miami too. So
Right. And then with Miami, he was not great either, except for the one shot that everybody remembers. But he's going to be great on my team.
He had big moments, and Pat trusted him. That's the reality.
Exactly, and that's all that matters.
And him and Dwayne got along famously.
Well, they did.
Oh my God! So I was there. Like, can I do this real quick?
Yes, we got all the time in the world. There's a virus.
So I'll never forget the Chicago series where him and Dwayne got into the argument, and I remember the year after they won the title, because everybody remembers the one. Ethan, you and Michael Wallace and I were seated very close to each other during that one where him and Dwayne got into it in the year they won.
Right, at United Center. Right, Game 4.
Right, at the United Center, right, Game 4. And they were yelling at each other, and, Twan was the one clapping, like telling them, come on, stop that. And,
Twan, peacemaker.
Zoe was calming people down, and just Shaq was just like, whatever. But the next year was the actual best year in the sense of the way Gary reacted. Because they got swept by Chicago the next year. So I don't think you were seated next to me and Wallace that year.
No.
But me and Michael Wallace were seated right next to each other, right behind the basket at the United Center. That's when there's still some arenas where you as media, you can sit behind the basket, but not many of them. Philly is one of them, interestingly enough. But Chicago was one at that time. And we were seated right by the Heat bench behind the basket. And they're getting wiped off the floor in Chicago. And Gary and Dwayne, I think, got into it again, if I recall correctly. And Shaq is trying to tell Gary to chill the bleep out or whatever. And Gary looks at him. He's like, man, bleep that. I already got my ring. And that was the end of the 2007 Heat.
I mean, that was the 2007 Heat, basically. Yeah. I mean, that was the whole team. I mean, we've told the story before, but I mean, the locker room in Dallas.
Were they a 4 seed or a 5 seed?
They were 4 seed. They were 4 seed. They were the home team.
I felt like they were lucky. I remember that year.
No. You may be right.
They were bad. They were bad that year, man.
You know what? I think they were 5 seed because I remember Pat clapping them off the floor at home in Game 4. So actually, I think,
ironically, very sarcastically. Yes,
very sarcastically, because I wrote a column. I remember when they were down 3-0, saying this team needs to show some fucking pride, and then they showed none. Luol Deng just swept them completely off the floor. George and I always talk about this because I ended up being right about that team, but not until they won a championship. So I don't get to count that one. But I hated the mix, as George knows. I hated the mix. I hated the trades. And they ended up working
that team became the team they were supposed to be the second year.
Right.
That first year, they somehow pulled it together.
Ethan pulled like Jimmy Johnson used to say, a 6-inch headline where he's like, this team will never work. And it worked.
Pat called me out about it. Pat, I remember when we were sitting there. I like this memory lane stuff before we get to Alf and Alex's terrible teams. I remember sitting in the front row in the interview room after they beat Detroit. After Jay Will had the incredible Game 7, and after they beat Detroit to get to the finals, and I just
it was a Game 6.
Oh, Game 6. I'm sorry.
They won in 6. Jay Will had a great Game 6.
And I remember Pat looking down at me and saying, we got there. And so that's how I knew he'd read the column from 7 months earlier.
That's when Pat was still spicy. You know what I'm saying? Like he's had some moments since then, as the non-coach. I mean, you talked about him clapping them off the court. That was also the year that he kicked the door in Chicago during the regular season and busted his hip. Like those. Dave Hyde always says this, and I think, Ethan, you and I agree. And, Alf, you got to see it like through the cameras. Like we were there for some of this stuff. And, Alex, I think you were like 12 or maybe younger, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. I feel like it's awesome that you got to see that as a kid, because when I was a kid, the Heat stunk. But it was really one of those things where having Pat around, and not to take away from Spo, because I think Spo, interestingly enough, over the last several years has really grown into his personality and gives zero bleeps.
Yeah, he doesn't care anymore.
Because he's got the pedigree now. Everyone knows he's a great coach. He's got championships. And, like, he's still super competitive, but he can say things that he maybe couldn't say early on in his career because he's got skin in the game now. But Pat, I mean, back then, by the time he got into Miami, I mean, he had already lived 2 lifetimes. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that we got to see Pat in the fashion that we got to see him, even for me, which, let's face it, I didn't start covering that team every day until Dwayne was drafted. I was there periodically before then, but not every day. And just having Pat around in any capacity for me was fantastic, which that year provided because Stan was done so early in that season. It just was a real treat. And just not having Pat around as much or speak as much for a long stretch of time, I felt like, without taking a shot at Spo again, because Spo was so young, kind of hurt, like, from a media perspective, where we just didn't have this person, this sage, right, that we could go to that was always willing to give you a good quote and a good line about someone or something.
Well, I mean, you can remember, because the reason this is relevant is because Alex and I, we talked about this in the last episode. Pat basically coached everybody on Alex's team except, well, he didn't coach Hassan, but he signed Hassan. But
except the knuckleheads.
Yeah, the knuckleheads, right? And Grant Long, he didn't. But the reality is Pat has his finger on pretty much every player we're talking about here. And yeah, I mean, if you go back to them getting swept out of the Charlotte series and him starting off with, was it Charlotte? Yeah, it was Charlotte, right? Charlotte North.
Yeah, you were right on. So you were right about the 2006 team in 2007, which didn't really count. You were also right about MASH a year late too.
I was right about MASH a year late. Exactly, I was. And then when MASH swept them out of that first round, him and Ricky Davis and Eddie Robinson of all people.
Oh my God, Eddie Robinson!
Eddie Robinson.
Remember that? Oh my
God,
that was a thing. Eddie Robinson. And
then Pat afterwards was, I'm ashamed and embarrassed. That was how he started.
Alex, this is the Mashburn. Alex, this is the Mashburn you're counting on guarding LeBron, by the way. So
but the Mashburn,
the Charlotte one was
Charlotte
fantastic.
Mashburn you'd won.
That is not my.
No, I'm talking about the one that the one that was on the Heat.
No, he was. Look, here's the thing with that, and I know Ethan has a way of telling this story that doesn't always really equate to what it was really like.
Oh.
And by the way, I think it's kind of interesting that we're also recording this pod while games 6 and 7 are airing on ESPN tonight from the 2013 series against the Spurs. But like, look, MASH made the wrong decision. I know Ethan will go die on this hill that he made the right decision passing the spoon. But if you watch that play over again, Jamal Mashburn in that play or on that play had an open look right from the free throw line extended. And he should have taken the shot right there. But the problem was he hesitated and then threw it to Spoon. And Spoon was like, what? Like, what is this? Like how is this in my hands? And that was the problem, is that he wasn't.
But the whole thing about it, George, was there's a narrative issue with MASH. Okay,
there was.
So this fit a narrative that MASH was not big in those moments. The similar narrative applied to Eddie Jones. Similar narrative was applied to some other players. But that's the thing. It fit the narrative. But then they would do things that fit the particular narrative, and that became an issue. All right, so we're going to tell more stories as we go forward, as we talk to the players. But let's go through some of the players, and then after some of the breaks, we'll start to break this down. All right, so George, you've had the chance to review our lineups. We're gonna give them out to the public right now, and we're doing this a few different ways. Okay, so I will start, and then you guys follow on this. This is who I'm starting, and if you listen to the previous episode, thanks to Alfredo Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry, who gave us all that YouTube sound. We're not gonna do that on this one, but I'll give you a general idea here. All right, my starting lineup: at guard, Goran Dragic and Eddie Jones; at forward, Glenn Rice, and starting at the 4, LeBron James; and at center, Bam Adebayo. And when we've talked about before, we're doing it based on today's style of play. Okay, so that's when we evaluate these teams. It's more about today's style of play.
So that was going to be my first question, because I heard you guys arguing about this on your last pod that I listened to from Tuesday, where, and I think Alex had a good point, which is you guys were talking about Lamar Odom, and yes, you're taking Lamar Odom's Heat tenure, and that's why you were drafting him. But you're also supposed to project. My understanding from the previous pods was you were supposed to project also what he would be like moving forward, which, yes, if he took more volume at 30%, he would probably stink from 3. But it doesn't mean that every year, if you were projecting he would be a 30% three-point shooter. And
no,
he wasn't that.
No, he wasn't. But I think what I think we want to do here is it's based on their production and efficiency while they were with the Heat, but you can extrapolate it and say, okay, if you took what they did then and you put that in more in today's style, what would they do? And that's why I made the point when we were talking about Odom in particular, that yes, he would probably shoot more threes, but let's keep him at the percentages that he was with in Miami. So it doesn't mean there couldn't have been some improvement.
He'd be James Johnson.
Probably. All right. So
I mean, he's way better than James Johnson.
From three, though. I'm talking about from three.
From three.
I even think he's just a better like technical shooter. Like his form is way better than James Johnson's.
I mean,
but he is what he is when he was here.
Numbers don't lie.
All right. So let's get through all these so that people don't lose track. I got
plenty of issues with your squad. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. All right. So here are the starters again. And now we're going to go through all these, and then we're going to go right to these guys. All right, Dragic and Eddie at the guards, Rice and LeBron at forward, Bam at the center. My sixth man is Antoine Walker. My backup guards are Peyton and Marley. Posey is my backup swing. P.J. Brown and Birdman are my backup 4-5s. My coach is Stan Van Gundy, the master of panic, but also a creative offensive mind and a friend of the program here. Alex, your team.
Yeah,
Who are your starters?
He's gonna get LeBron to play the 4 full time. By the way,
he is. All right, Alex, go ahead. Let's get through the damn teams, please. Alex.
So I've got the best backcourt you can come up with, Hardaway and Wade. You know, I've got Mashburn and Shane Battier. I think are going to be the 2 starters. I'm still thinking about that, but then I've got MVP level Shaq as my starting big man there. Since Alf wanted to go ahead and take Bosh and Zoe over Shaq, I'm like, I will gladly take him. And then I've got Pat Riley coaching a bunch of guys he's coached before.
Your sixth man?
I think it's going to be Lamar Odom. I think that's what I'm going to do.
And the rest of your reserves, backup backcourt?
So I've got in the backup backcourt, I've got Dion Waiters and Josh Richardson. Another
let him finish, please.
Another great backcourt, if I might add. But I've also got Caron Butler. I've got Lamar Odom coming off the bench, and I've got Hassan. And then I've got Grant Long as my 11th man.
Pat Riley is coaching. Alf, starting backcourt?
Starting backcourt is Jason Williams, who is the starting point guard for the first ever Miami Heat championship team.
We don't need the editorializing. Just give us your damn starting backcourt.
Everyone else got a little bit. And Steve Smith, who his peak year was 17-5-5. I just want everyone to remember that. Steve Smith was very good. Jimmy Butler at the 3, and Jimmy Butler is a top 8 player in the NBA this year. Then we have Chris Bosh at the 4, who Pete Chris Bosh, everyone knows, defensive monster, offensive wizard. And we have MVP level Alonzo Mourning. I think everyone forgets about that. He was second in MVP voting, just like Shaq was. But at the same time, he was also Defensive Player of the Year twice. So, yeah, we can talk about how Shaq was robbed of an MVP, but Zoe was Defensive Player of the Year twice during his peak with the Miami Heat, and he is my starting center.
I'm going to get a sandwich. Who's your sixth man?
And sixth man is Ray Allen, who hit the biggest shot in Heat history. And then we have Mario Chalmers, who we all know was clutch as F when he was at his peak. Udonis Haslem, who was the starting power forward on a championship team. We also have Ronnie Cycli, second greatest rebounder in Miami Heat history. We have Brian Grant, and who else? Oh, and then we have Duncan Robinson, who is the greatest three-point shooter in Miami Heat history.
And the coach is Eric Spoelstra.
And the coach is Eric Spoelstra, who has won the most championships in Miami Heat history. So I think when you count rings, Miami Heat rings, I think I got the most on my team. We got to go back and look.
All right, well, we can total that up. But one more thing before we get to George. All right, so one of the things we discussed was closing lineups. Okay, so here's what we came up with for closing lineups. When we close, my team closes, I am most likely going to replace Eddie Jones and Goran Dragic with James Posey and Dan Marley, which means LeBron's going to run point late in games with 3 shooters and Bam Adebayo. And that's mostly because we don't really trust him.
And only one ring. Only one ring.
That's nice. Alex, what is your closing lineup? Is Shane going to stay in your closing lineup? Is that the plan?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to end up keeping Shane there just because, if I had to guard LeBron, I want somebody who I can depend on. And again, I'm not going to depend on one guy to guard LeBron. I just wanted to have as many, big wing bodies as you can there, which, by the way, Alf has none of outside of Jimmy Butler. But
he's going to be closing, though, so we'll be fine.
But yeah, that's gonna be it's gonna be the same as
Steve Smith is a tiny little man, I guess. But whatever, you were 5 when he played, so
listen, don't talk to me about Steve Smith. You've been disparaging Dion Waiters, who put up the same numbers in that 30-11 season, all right, as Steve Smith did.
Inefficiently with inflated
with great defense,
inflated pace, but okay,
very good shooting. I mean, I got him with the last pick. That's great value. But anyways, the closing lineup is Hardaway, Wade, Battier, Shaq, and then whoever's playing better that game between Mashburn and Odom. I'd probably lean Odom. I just think he's a better player overall. But like I said, I don't know enough about Mashburn. Either way, I'm good with that closing 5. Whichever one edges the other out.
All right, so you got it, George. Are you clear? You've got all of this written down. You have an understanding of this before we.
I didn't get my closing lineup.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, that's right. Ray's replacing Jay Will, right? Is that what you're doing?
Ray's replacing Jay Will, basically. So it's Bosh, Zoe, Jimmy Butler, Steve Smith, and Ray Allen. Might have to put Mario Chalmers in for Steve Smith if he's shooting well that night.
All right, so you got it. You got it, George. We got the starting lineups, the closing lineups, the reserves, the coaches. Do you have any questions before we start to evaluate these teams?
No, I think I'm good. I'll ask as we go along, but you can go on to whatever the next thing is.
All right. Well, the next thing is one of our great sponsors, and that is Keystone Chiropractic and Neuroplasticity, which is focused on low-force spinal adjustments and brain-based rehabilitation. They get great results with post-concussion syndrome, dizziness and vertigo, headaches, and chronic neck and back pain. A lot of chiropractors and therapists want to see you 3 times a week, but Keystone has a treatment philosophy of doing just enough to get you back to normal life again. And here's the big thing. We know everybody's at this stay-at-home order across the country. They're now offering virtual rehab visits using video conferencing to assess and prescribe effective treatment protocols during the COVID-19 outbreak. Research shows patients getting supervised telemedicine rehab programs can be just as effectively treated as an in-person visit for many of the pain conditions. Our friend, Dr. John Chung, who's a big follower of the network, has been a big supporter of us, is the one that brought Keystone to us, and we want you to support our sponsors if you can. So mention 5 reasons or 5 on the floor, follows all of it, for a free 15-minute video or phone consultation. That's right, free, and save 50% off your first virtual rehab session. The website is chiropractickeystone.com. You can also follow Dr. Chung at Dr. Jonathan Chung, no H in there, Dr. Jonathan Chung on Twitter. All right. Let's get to it. We've presented our teams. We have to sort of act like these 3 teams are going to play against each other in kind of a round-robin tournament. I'm going to turn it over to George now to pepper us with questions about how our team's going to react to certain situations and how they match up and what his issues are. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say as I look, let's start with Alf. I have questions about the roster construction here on all you guys. So
we all do.
Alf, I feel like your team was constructed by the Knicks front office from this past year. As I look at just how many big men you have, it just doesn't feel like there's a great fit per se. I don't think you have enough spacing. I don't think you have good shooting per se because of that. And you just have a bunch of guys that I don't feel like can play well together. What is your argument for the roster construction?
Okay, first of all, I have 3 of the top 5 3-point percentage guys in Miami Heat history, I believe. But
wait a second. Let's do that.
With Rio, with Ray, and Duncan Robinson.
How much is Mario Chalmers playing on your roster?
He's a backup point. He's a backup point.
Okay, so he's going to play 15 minutes a night.
No, come on.
20?
How many? I honestly, I probably think he would play more minutes than Jay Will would.
Then why would you? Okay. So if he's going to play more than Jay Will,
because I needed. After the 2 greatest point guards in Miami Heat history were already taken, and Tim Hardaway and Goran Dragic. So who's next? Do you pick when you have a team as a team like mine where you need somebody, a playmaker, you pick Jason Williams. And I knew I can get Mario Chalmers in the second round. So when it comes to the third and fourth best point guards, I believe I have those two guys. I believe the other teams are really lacking when it comes to backcourt off the bench. I mean, when you look at the other two teams, who's running their team off the bench?
LeBron James.
Okay, not off the bench. You're talking about a starter.
No, but
right. But here's the thing: like,
when we talk about depth, I believe my team has the most depth. My team has three of the best shooters.
Your team has the most front court depth. Like, but I don't think you have any real depth beyond that. Like seriously.
Glad you're here, George.
So let me ask you this question. Like, I like your ball handling with Jay Will and Steve Smith. Like, I'll give you that because I think Steve Smith is an excellent ball handler and creates a size matchup in your favor for everyone outside except, well, definitely against Alex's team, but not so much against Ethan because he's got LeBron and he's got Eddie who can at least match up with him specifically. But I mean, who's handling – and Jimmy, I guess Jimmy handles the ball well. We've seen that this year. That's something we hadn't seen in previous years.
You have three guys in my starting lineup that can handle the ball. Come on.
Right, but where's your spacing? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, on that group, like, okay, you just said that you're really just replacing Jay Will with Ray. So you're replacing him with Ray, but Ray can't defend. So So I still have four good defenders. And if we're going to talk, we wanted to extrapolate 3-point shooting or whatever and percentages out into today's game. Steve Smith we're talking about Lamar Odom. Steve Smith was a much better shooter. And I got Chris Bosh out there. So I have three guys that can stretch the floor. I have Jimmy Butler, and I have Alonzo freaking Mourning, peak Alonzo Mourning, that was scoring 22 points a game, double-digit rebounds, and Defensive Player of the Year. So, we got to stop acting like – where are you going to score? How are you going to score with this group? Like, do you realize that
down the stretch?
Alonzo Mourning –
Chris Bosh – okay.
Hold on. Alonzo Mourning, for as good as he was in his peak season, he was third in the MVP voting, okay? He wasn't like a fluid offensive player at any point, really. Maybe that year he was a little more fluid, but he was never, even in his peak, a fluid offensive player. And
the best offensive player is Chris Bosh.
Right.
So we're saying that Chris Bosh, Jimmy Butler, and Steve Smith can't score down the stretch.
You're running your offense through Chris Bosh.
Of course I am.
Okay. I mean, if you think that's better than what the other two teams have, then
I mean, after you take LeBron, see, here's a problem. After you take LeBron and Wade, right? Who's the next best option?
You chose to pick third.
Shaq is. You can run offense through Shaq still. Like, there's still nobody on any of these rosters that can match up with Shaq in prime Shaq. Not even Zoe. He would take Zoe.
But we're not talking about prime Shaq. We're talking about 0405 Shaq. We're talking about
0405 should have been the MVP.
So should have Zoe in 99 and 2000. Bro, 99 and 2000, Zoe was the defensive player of the year.
Right, but
we're saying that he couldn't match up with Shaq?
No.
The Shaq that couldn't beat Detroit without Dwayne.
No.
Who couldn't beat Ben Wallace without Dwayne?
Yes, he could have beaten. He could beat Ben Wallace. Go look at Shaq's numbers with the Lakers in that series.
Okay. You're talking about Lakers.
No. Yeah, you got to keep it to the
05 Shaq against the Detroit Pistons without Dwayne Wade. What did he do? They lost Game 6 and Game 7. Did they not?
Right, but that's because Eddie Jones just was a disaster in that.
Oh, so it's Eddie Jones' fault. So it's Eddie Jones' fault.
Okay, do we want
Shaq
to pull up?
Stan. So there you go.
Do you want to pull up those games?
I mean, we sure.
Because I remember Shaq being really good in those games.
Shaq was good. I'm saying, but down the stretch, Shaq has never been the down the stretch guy ever. Believe me, I watch a lot. I watch a ton.
Well, I was a Lakers fan. They only played one game without Dwayne, which was Game 6, which Eddie literally vomited.
Come on, Game 7, Dwayne wasn't Dwayne. All right.
I understand.
Dwayne was injured Game 7.
Okay, you're gonna let me talk, or you're gonna defend your team, right?
Go ahead.
Let's do it. Okay, so I was there, okay, behind the bench. I remember how.
Oh, here we go.
21 points for Dwayne Wade. Yes,
it's like when I say I told you so. Go ahead.
The shot wore off in the second half, but that game Stan got fired basically because he didn't run offense through Shaq, who was killing them, because he tried to run offense through Dwayne when Dwayne wasn't the same player in that game because of the injury. And Damon Jones's turnover was what cost them the end of that game.
Damon should have been on one of these teams.
As much as anything. It certainly wasn't Shaq who cost them that game. Eddie Jones in Game 6 played one of the worst playoff games I've seen an alleged all-star play. There was a moment, you interrupted me so I couldn't finish saying this. There was a moment in Game 6, I don't remember what quarter it was anymore, but I remember sitting there watching this and going, good God, what is happening here? He almost missed the entire backboard on a shot one time. Like, it was incredible to watch how small he came up in that game.
Well, George, I think this was my fault because my column before that game was this will be the game that Eddie proves his worth. So there you go. Anyway, that's what happens. Here's my question. Alex and I are going to get opportunities to grill him too and send him to George. And then
Shaq had 24-13 in Game 6 of that series where Eddie Jones vomited.
All right. And then Alex and I are going to be in the hot seat. But while we go with Alf here's my question for you. Spo is your head coach, okay?
I would have gone with Pat if I were you, because you're playing with so many big men, and he loves big men. Alf.
I'm playing with versatile big men, though.
So Spo, but this lends itself to the fact that Spo's going to run his offense through Chris. I mean, I'm looking at the roster here. He'll have the ball in Jimmy's hands a lot, and I think because of that, honestly, I think Rio or Ray would be better starting options for you than Jay Will. Do you agree with that, George? Because I think Rio is your best option. Yeah, I would start Rio.
I would start Rio and just bring Jay Will off the bench. Yeah,
I would
that's
too.
what I was alluding to earlier.
It's about who closes.
But you don't have Rio closing. You have Ray.
I have Ray or Rio. I said Rio might have to replace Steve Smith if he's got it going. Listen, guys. It's about feel, about what's happening in the game.
I also love how you were trying to throw in Duncan Robinson as like a viable option to play in any of these games.
Oh my God, Duncan Robinson from 3 is killing everybody. Get out of here.
Who's he guarding on these teams?
Yeah, get out of
here. I mean, look at my roster. Okay, he's not guarding LeBron. He's not guarding Eddie. I guess you could put him on Glenn. I guess. On Alex's team, you put him on Shane, I guess. Maybe.
Yes. See, there you go.
That's about it. But you're not putting him on anyone on your team.
On my team, no. No, you might be able to put him on Glenn. I mean, Glenn's going to cook him from deep.
Yeah, but Duncan Robinson is not in the closing lineup. Like you guys.
No, I know, but you were trying to pass him off.
You guys are picking my 11th man. You guys are picking my 11th man.
But what are you doing with these other extra bigs? This is what I don't. Okay, this is what I don't understand.
Yeah, Alex, let's look at this roster. What
do you do with the extra bigs?
Yeah, you have UD, Brian Grant, who basically are the same position, and you have Ronnie Cycli, who I like. You know what I'm saying? But it's like
none of them can play the 3.
Right. You have nobody who played the wings, and the other 2 teams are loaded with wings.
I have Steve Smith. I have Jimmy Butler. And I have who else? Brian Grant can play a little 3.
No way!
He can't. Brian in today's game is strictly a 5.
So let me ask you a question. How did the fans vote when you started unveiling this stuff?
The fans love my reserves, hated my starters.
Of course, because your starters stink. They stink.
My God.
They're by far the worst group here.
Okay, the whole thing is once you don't get LeBron or Dwayne, nobody even gives you a shot.
That's not true.
99. No, see, here's the problem.
Do the draft with me at 3 and 4. Go. Who went first?
Ethan? Go. Bosh and Shaq.
Yes, Bosh and Shaq.
Yes.
See, I don't agree.
Oh, no,
I
actually would have taken. I would have taken Shaq and Timmy. That fits better.
Oh, God, that's terrible. So you would have left Bosh on the table to get Tim Hardaway.
Because your team doesn't fit.
How does it not fit?
You don't have wings. You don't have shooting. You don't have anything. You have a bunch of big men.
Bro, I have 3 of the top 5 shooters in Miami Heat history.
I get it. And none of them are actually going to play when it matters outside of maybe Ray.
You guys just told me Rio should play. Now he's not going to play.
No, but you're the one that said that you'd rather start Jay Will.
I said start. We talked about starting. We talked about closing.
So let me ask.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask the questions here, Ethan, for 1 second. Okay, can we just do this? Let's get a better definition before we just keep arguing and going in circles, because that's only fun for so long. Like, how are you divvying up these minutes is my question. Like, you didn't answer that when I asked you that 10 minutes ago.
I mean, this is Coach Spoelstra's team, not mine, sir.
Oh, for the love of God.
Like, what do you want me to say? How many minutes per game each person is going to get?
I mean, give me at least a range.
I mean, I would probably say Jay Will's going to get 18 to 20.
So
I think Rio would probably get more, basically like he was on the championship team. But I just think with that starting lineup, you need a guy who can create a little bit, get in the lane, and make things happen, and not put the onus on Jimmy so early in the game.
I mean, that
now
is similar
closing,
to the
Jimmy's going to have the ball in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, Gary played a lot. Gary played a lot of the clutch minutes. Essentially, Rio would be playing the minutes that Gary played. Essentially,
and then and then to close it, you would have Ray Allen. You would have a backcourt of either Ray Allen and Rio or Ray Allen and Steve Smith.
All right, yeah, I'll tell you this: the audience was right. Your team stinks.
Well, it's not that it's it stinks.
Compared to the other two.
But here's my thing, Alf. A couple of things. Defensively, I mean, again, you have the potential to be really good with Zoe, Jimmy, and Chris up front. Okay, no question about that. But my question is, you've got guys on your bench that are kind of wasted. Like, where does UD? Like, to me, UD could fill a valuable role on one of these three teams, but it's not yours. Like,
right.
who's he going to play? Like, because like you said, there's duplication with Haslam and Brian Grant.
Yeah, like
Cycling becomes worthless. Okay,
Alf,
on your team.
Alf, could you have taken Marley? Did you have an opportunity to take Dan Marley?
No, he's got taken before I could take him.
No, that's not true. You took Ray instead of Dan.
I took Ray before Dan Marley.
That's fine. I'm just saying because I'm looking at other guys here like that you could have taken potentially that might have made a little more sense. But like that comes to mind just as looking at someone like you could plug in that actually could play the three when you don't have Jimmy or Steve Smith on the floor.
But why would I not have Jimmy or Steve Smith on the floor?
I mean,
that's the thing. What you guys are like.
What if your guys get into foul trouble? Then what?
Okay, but so now we have both Jimmy and Steve Smith in foul trouble.
I don't know. You got to simulate everything, right?
I mean, we're going to simulate the okay.
Alf, your team
I'll play Zoe at the three.
I'll put it this way. I hate your team. Let's just move on.
Okay.
Alex, do you have anything for Alf before we move on to the next one?
I mean, what else can I add to that? I feel like I've been flaming out for two and a half episodes already.
Dude, you picked Caron Butler first in the second round. I don't want to hear anything from you.
Second round?
You picked Caron Butler, Hassan Whiteside, and Deion Waiters for your bench.
In the reserve draft.
The reserve draft.
Like in the second round.
No,
in his reserve draft. The first guy he picked was Caron Butler. You picked Deion Waiters, Hassan Whiteside. All right, I don't want to hear about you about drafting.
All right, Caron's not going to play in the closing lineup. Good luck, man. Good luck.
Well, you're getting grilled. You're getting grilled next, and then I get grilled after that. All right. So before we get to that, though, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is Smarty Pants Marketing. Because these days you need a comprehensive social media strategy, not just like haphazard. You got to have a strategy, and it is a South Florida, as all of our sponsors are, based digital marketing agency. Most marketing companies are going to be quick to sell you a tool or a specific marketing service because they don't know how to help you build that strategy. At Smarty Pants Marketing, the goal is to develop a complete strategy for every aspect of the customer's buying journey. They've got a 90-day growth accelerator program, which will set you apart from your competition, increase your sales, and provide you a marketing strategy plan that guarantees growth. To find out more, visit www.smartypants, there's a Z in there, smartypantsmarketing.com, or call 954-406-7160, 954-406-7160, or email Allen, that's ALLEN, at smartypantsmarketing.com. All right, Alex, you have been the cockiest of everybody.
Yep.
I'm looking at the polling right now and this may change by the time this episode airs, but basically people have you and me neck and neck. And I think the reason that I gained on you after you led the polling initially was because of some of these reserve picks.
And some of your tweets.
And my tweets. I'm a big influencer. George, have at him.
I loved Alex's first five. I know that he moved Lamar to the bench, which I also think is a smart move, to be honest with you. But I loved Alex's starting five. And I guess you told me that the audience picked him as the best starting five. And I would agree wholeheartedly with the audience. No disrespect to you, Ethan. I think your team is good. I liked the first 3 picks. And, the next 2 were okay. Like, I thought Goran was a good pick. I'm not a huge Eddie guy. So, particularly in the clutch, as we've discussed already, as I mentioned to Alf, who was trying to, like, all of a sudden make Eddie Jones, like, not a big part of that 2005 team a few minutes ago. But let's go with Alex. I love your starting 5.
That didn't happen. Okay, go ahead.
It did happen. We heard it. We can move on now. Alex's starting 5 is fantastic. Even taking out Lamar and putting in – who did you put in, Mash or Shane instead?
Shane.
Right. You had Mash in your original group. So I love it. I think Shaq and Wade together, we know that equals a championship. I actually think having a second creator with Dwayne in the backcourt is good.
Yes.
We forget that Dwayne, in his peak, we're talking about one of the best defensive guards in the league at that time too, even though Timmy was, running around with, some knee issues. Timmy was still a grimy defender. Like he was like a better version of what GP was in that 2006 run as a defender for the Heat at that time. I heard Ethan kind of talking about, Timmy wearing the knee brace and not being anywhere near the same defender. Look, I mean, he didn't have the kind of lateral movement he had, but he wasn't like a minus defender, in my opinion. I actually felt like he was a slightly above average defender. He was surrounded by great defenders too, but I don't think he was like a bad defender on those.
No, he wasn't a bad defender. I was talking more about transition defense. There were a lot of times, whereas Dwayne over the years stopped getting back on D because he didn't feel like it. Tim stopped getting back on D because he just couldn't get back on D anymore. So that's more in the half court. Tim knew his role, which was funnel everything to Zoe, right? And that's what they did. So
Shaq is, to me, look. He's a fantastic pick because his time with the Heat, yes, it ended poorly, but those first 2 years, I know people say, well, in the Maverick series. Well, the Maverick series was the first time we ever saw Shaq look human. And a lot of that was Avery Johnson and the credit that he should get a lot of credit. And by the way, LeBron just hit the big 3 to get the Heat within 2 with 20 seconds to go with Manu going to the line as I'm watching at least Game 6 right now. And Shaq, like his first years we talked about should have been the MVP. Like Alf, will you even debate that since you feel like fighting with me on everything?
No, he definitely should have been the MVP over Steve Nash. I just think we're discounting late 90s Zoe a lot, but whatever.
But Shaq was the most dominant player. Shaq was the most dominant player of his generation and was robbed of the MVP. Zoe was not robbed of the MVP that year.
Zoe was also defensive player of the year. Just wanted to add that.
Cool. And so was Ben Wallace, and Shaq cooked him too.
Not in 2005. Not in 2005.
Yes, he did. I just told you in their worst game, he went for 24 and 13.
24 points is not cooking. 24 points is not cooking Ben Wallace.
Again,
calm down.
We're doing this.
He was Alf. It's Alex's time on the hot seat.
Go ahead. Right. Double team.
George, criticize Alex. I'm not even concerned about Alf. I'm concerned about Alex. Go to Alex.
Alf, your team stinks. We're done with you. So back to Alex. So I love the Shaq pick. Shaq's first 2 years, the Heat. And by the way, here's the other thing. Even the year we were just making fun of to start the podcast, the 2007 season, remember when Dwayne got hurt with the shoulder injury, the torn labrum? They were looking really bad as far as even making the playoffs at one point. And Shaq took the Heat on a 10-game run that put them back into that 5-seed area, that middle-of-the-pack playoff area. So Shaq still had a little juice left in him at that point. It's just that team was a disaster around them. And Shaq was starting to show that he was more human, but he still had moments even then of greatness, even in that third season. So Shaq's a great pick. Look, for as much as I give Mash a lot of grief for the Weatherspoon shot, Mash is a really complete player. He's one of the more complete players in Heat history. From an offensive standpoint, he could do everything. Defensively, he was better than most people give him credit for. As much as I give him grief for that moment, and there was a narrative around him, I would agree with that. I think he was an excellent player. And Shane is a good role player. And you could have a role player on your roster. If you want to shoot threes, you need a 3-and-D guy. He's perfect. He's super smart. Lamar as a 6-man is probably, let me look at their other rosters. He's the best 6-man on any of these rosters. The rest of your bench, though, I was listening to that draft, and I'm going, what are you doing? Like, what is happening here? You had such a good start to your draft of your team, and then every pick that you made basically after that, I was like, what? Like, what are you thinking? Like, why are you going with that guy? Look, I like Karan. But Karan, the Heat Karan is a young guy. And if we're projecting out to what he would be a little bit, then sure, he's a good pick. But I think if we're going by the Heat standards, then it wasn't that great of a pick. At least it wouldn't have been where I would have gone right away. Like, who else was available at that point?
I was going between Marley and Battier, my other two guys at that point. First pick in the second round, just because I wanted some wing depth. I wasn't sure about Marley as a 3. Ethan.
Yeah, I would have gone with Dan. Yeah, I would have gone with Marley there. I wouldn't have given Ethan Marley.
I think so too. I said later in the pod that it was my most regrettable pick. However, I will defend the rest of my bench to no ends. I think
Okay, let's go. So your next pick after Karan was who?
I don't remember the exact order, but I want to. I mean, no, it wasn't Hassan. Hassan was later on.
Rich.
It was Jay Rich.
It was Jay Rich.
And you called him a good shooter. I mean, I guess he's a good shooter. Like,
What?
I don't look at him as a good shooter. Like, I think of him as a streaky shooter. I don't think of him as a guy that I can depend on. Not like Marley, for example. Like, Marley is a guy that I know is a spacer, like guaranteed floor spacer. That's not Jay Rich. Jay Rich is a good defender. Jay Rich is a decent all-around player and can shoot, again, from a streaky perspective, he's a decent shooter. But I don't think I can count on him. And one thing about Jay Rich that always drove me insane is if you ever had to put the ball in his hands in a big moment, God bless you, because it wasn't working. And, yeah, Ray Allen just hit that 3. Anyway, sorry.
Well, to be fair to him, George, Jay Rich is probably not going to be handling down the stretch on this team, right? Not with Dwayne and Tim.
Probably not. But even as a role guy, I guess he's fine, right? I guess he's fine.
And he's the bench shooting guard. Like, I think bench shooting guard Josh Richardson at his peak, like, that's
he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. He's not. I would have taken Dan Marley over any of those guys. Then, like, Hassan Whiteside, look, dude. I know he put up big numbers at times, and, you know, he had 2020 games before he got paid. And he was actually a better player before he got paid than he was after, in my estimation.
That's the guy we're talking about.
But let's face it, he's just a locker room disaster, okay? And he behaves like an immature child. Like, not just a child, an immature child. So
he's no Ronnie Cycli.
I'd much rather have Ronnie Cycli than
music will be better in the locker room with Ronnie, that's for sure.
Anyway. Yeah, and Ronnie clearly the best DJ of the group. There is no doubt about that. Yes. But yeah, Ronnie can't defend anybody, but he can score and rebound. And Whiteside could defend when he's interested. But
he was a defensive player of the year candidate at his best here, though. He was like a top 5 candidate, wasn't he?
Right, but he's not moving the ball. Like, you're screwed once he's in the game. Well, like, he's going to shoot every time.
That's a good thing. He's the backup 5.
Right, but he's also going to probably – I heard you guys talking about this, and I think it's true. He's also going to probably think that he's better than Shaq, which is ridiculous.
Not probably. He's definitely going to think that. There's no question about that.
I mean, look, if you're going to pick a guy, I think that could emulate some of the stuff you're supposed to do with Shaq, I guess he's the right pick if that was your logic. I just think from a personality standpoint, it's not a good fit. And I think that, again, even on the floor, like, he's just not going to move the ball very well. He's not going to pass out of the post. He's just going to take it and either turn it over or try his best to score, which isn't ideal against some of these other teams, particularly against Ethan's. But even against Alf's, like, I think Zoe would swallow him up. And I don't think he could defend Ronnie, to be honest with you.
I'm not worried about that matchup.
Oh, no, he gets cooked against good players. Let's face it. Like, I heard you guys talking about looters in a riot. Like, give me the games where, like, consistently where Hassan outplayed really good centers.
Well, you don't want to put him against a Lopez, brother.
Well, trust me, I've never been a Whiteside defender, but I do like the prospects of him as a backup big. I think him at his best here, like, his market was a max player, and we already know, like, we've done the Whiteside.
I mean, no, he was not a max player. They gave him a max contract, but he was not a max player.
Saying his market. That's what he was offered by other teams, and that was what he was chased as. And I think even if he wasn't a max player, he wasn't, right? Like, he should not have been in that role, he was still a very good player in like 2015, 2016, whatever you want to call his peak. He was a damn good defensive player. I like him off the bench a lot. And I either way, he's going to be playing under 20 minutes with Shaq there. So
okay, you could justify that a little bit, maybe.
And I've got Grant Long there as my 11th guy, just in case Whiteside wants to act up.
Which is fine. But the worst pick you made, like I couldn't believe you picked Dion Waiters. Dion Waiters of all people?
Come on, man.
Like, get the hell all the way out of here, okay, with Dion Waiters on any of these rosters.
George, I'm sorry to interject, but he said that Dion Waiters at his peak was better than Ray Allen here at his peak. Just wanted to make sure that that is
Are you talking about
that's understood.
Player? Is that not true?
Man, Ray Allen was the consummate professional. Like, that stuff has to factor into this equation too. Now,
I didn't draft Dion to be the consummate professional. I got Battier. I've got Grant Long. Like, I'm not worried about the locker room just because I've got Pat there.
This is a guy that has the least self-awareness. I mean, we just talked about Hassan, okay? But he's got the least self-awareness in Heat history, okay? He called himself Kobe Wade in college, gave himself the nickname.
And that's
Kobe
exactly
Wade.
why I'm not worried about him causing any problems with Wade, because he admires Wade. And he's got Riley there. Riley's going to get all these people. You know, he's not going to have them thinking that they're even going to have a chance at, you know, getting a spot over Wade or Shaq.
Right. So how many bad shots are you going to allow him to take every game?
I don't know, man. It's he's going to
before you yank him. Because if you thought Spo had a quick leash with him, you don't think Riley's going to have a quick leash with him? Riley, Ethan, what was Riley's mantra? Play 9, trust 8? And then in the playoffs, play 8, trust 7?
6. You get down to 6 at a certain point. I mean, here's my thing about it, and then I want Alf to grill Alex a little on this too. Beyond the locker room issues that Hassan's going to think he's better than Shaq and Dion's going to think he's better than Dwayne, which both of them will do. I have more of a question about the starting lineup fit. I know that you love the line, and I actually like putting Battier in for Lamar there. I think that that's the right choice, having Battier play with Mash, letting Mash play the 4, because I think that's his best fit. Okay, and Shane and Jamal will be interchangeable. I don't love what everybody else loves. I don't think Dwayne and Tim Hardaway is an ideal backcourt match. Dwayne always thrived most with guys who don't need the ball, just like LeBron does or did. Okay, and I know what Kyrie did with him, but that was an adjustment. And I don't see a great fit with Dwayne and Tim from a basketball perspective. Am I the only one who thinks that? Like, Dwayne played with Rio his whole career.
Of course, Alf agrees.
I agree.
No, I like it. I think that Tim became a pretty good, granted, era has to matter, but Tim was a big time clutch shooter.
No, he wasn't. He shot 36% from 3 on 5 attempts per game, and the attempts would go up even though the shot looked ugly
right.
in. But I don't love. But he also needed. I mean, Tim, even in Miami, we're not thinking of Golden State, Tim. Okay,
no, I know.
But where he was out in transition, right, and he was playing with Richmond and Mullen, and there was space, and they were playing with undersized 4s and 5s. I mean, they were the Warriors before the Warriors, basically. Okay, and Tim was getting up and down the floor, going back and forth quickly. But in Miami, he was a pound the ball, 3-point shooter, ball into Zoe wait for the double, okay, or make, as you said, at times Zoe could be a little clunky with his sort of mechanics and his footwork or whatever. The ball would go back out to Tim, and Tim would shoot that knuckleball jumper. But Tim did handle a lot. His usage was high. And Dwayne's never played. I mean, the one time that Dwayne played with a point guard like that was Goran. And you remember how, what a difficult fit. Like, I didn't want to put the two of them together like that because it wasn't a great fit.
Yeah, but Timmy's a way better player than Goran.
I'm not saying that Timmy's not better than Goran, but I'm saying and Timmy's a better passer than Goran. But I think
that's the difference, is that Dwayne would respect Timmy more than Dwayne would respect Goran.
But doesn't that take away from what Dwayne can do?
No, because Dwayne at that stage, if we're talking peak Dwayne Wade MVP, I also think Timmy is self-aware enough to step back a little bit with Dwayne like he did with Zoe. Because you remember, Ethan, I know that you said that, and he did. Timmy carried those teams early in his career, but Zoe, at the end of their tenure, was allowed to flourish because Timmy allowed it to happen.
Yeah, the shame of those teams, it's always like I talk about with the Dolphins, that the shame is that when they finally got a defense in Jason and Zach, Dan was too old. The shame of those Heat teams was by the time that Zoe grew into the role, Timmy's body broke down. Okay, in a lot of ways. I mean, and you know, the games missed, and he suffered through a lot of the things that Dwayne did. You know, towards the end of his career. I have enormous respect for Tim, but I'm also looking at this team defensively with the starting group. Okay, I think playing Shane makes a lot of sense. All right, but and obviously, if you're getting peak Dwayne Wade, then that's different than the defender we saw later in his career. But
yeah. By the way, Shaq was a guy in those first couple of years with the Heat was putting up pretty good defensive numbers.
He was, but you can run this team, though. Like, I'm looking at this team, and I'm saying you're going to – I mean, Dwayne's going to have some chase-down blocks, but if you get out in transition against this team – like,
well, who was the team that gave them the most trouble besides Dallas? Do you remember?
The 06 – no, they struggled against
No. Even 05 and 06. Do you remember
both teams. I don't remember. Which one was it?
Phoenix.
Phoenix, right. The Stoudemire, Marion. You're right. The Nash teams. Yeah, right. So I think you can run this team. And then the only other thing I look at is I'm just wondering, like, Shaq's always needs to play with space, right? So I'm looking at the starting lineup. Okay, Dwayne's not giving him space.
But Timmy and Shane are, and Mash.
Okay, so I guess it's enough. I suppose it's enough. Alex,
and then Lamar when he gets in there.
True, and there's going to be a lot of staggering going on with this group too. I'm not just going to be playing starters and bench because of the Hardaway Wade thing. I do like them playing together, and it's going to be my closers, obviously. But I would like to see lineup similar to what Ethan did, where he put Posey in there and took Goran out. I would do similar stuff with Wade and Hardaway just so they could play with their own lineups. But I think that's the most fair criticism of my team. What Ethan said now is the space around Shaq. I think I have enough shooting, but just barely enough, right? Like, I think if we could trade, you know, me and Alf, I think we'll be able to make a trade happen just because Alf needs more wings and I need more shooting. I could, you know, give him like Karan for Duncan Robinson or something like that. But
I see a space issue there. I do. And I also think, what are you going to do, Alex, when Hassan and Dion are suspended for half the season? Because that's coming.
Here's the thing with Shaq, and this is the thing that Alf particularly is underestimating, is that Shaq shot 60% from the field those first 2 years with the Heat, which, by the way, he shot 60% from the field in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2005 too. So he was exactly what he was in the regular season. And I think that's the thing. Like, we're forgetting how freaking dominant Shaq was at that stage. Like, he was still Shaq.
Yep.
That's all we have to answer that. All right. Closing argument.
I get it. I get it. I just do not. I think we're discounting how dominant Zoe was. I really am. And I also think that Zoe was a better fit next to a Bosh that you want scoring the ball. I think Zoe and Bosh fit better together than Zoe and then Bosh and Shaq. So if you're going to pick Bosh, so if you're going to pick Shaq and Timmy Sedano, that makes sense. But if you're going to pick Bosh first, which I feel like most people would have picked Bosh third, I think Bosh fits way better next to Zoe than he does next to Shaq, because I think Shaq completely mitigates a lot of the things that Bosh does.
I mean, why? Shaq likes to play with space, and if Bosh is going to space the floor, then I think
but if you have Bosh as just a spacer, that mitigates what Bosh is.
He's going to be that regardless.
I mean, but what's he going to – where's Zoe going to play? He's not
Zoe's going to play down low. Yeah, he's going to play in the paint.
So then what's Bosh going to be?
Bosh is going to facilitate. Bosh can space and facilitate.
But who are you running? Okay, but here's my thing. We already agreed that Spo, and we're back to Al's team, but Spo is going to run his offense through. Pap would run it through Zoe. Okay, but Spo is your coach. He's going to run his offense through Bosh at the.
He's going to use Bosh like.
But then what does Zoe become? Because we're not in a post up era right now, and so we're
not in a post up era, but.
But you can post up with Shaq still because he's so big. Like, nobody's stopping that. Whereas with Zoe, he's not that imposing physically.
Nobody had to change their entire defense to face Zoe. That's my thing.
Correct.
I love Zoe, okay? And I was there during that season. I covered that team every game home and road, and I think he could have been the MVP that year. he was terrific, okay? And he made up for, I thought, was somewhat limited footwork in some situations. And his intensity is second to none in Heat history. But nobody went into a game thinking, okay, we have to take Zoe away and so all these other shooters. But people still went into games. I like Zoe personally more than I like Shaq. But, like, people went into games thinking we have to take Shaq away. In fact, the 2006 finals is the best freaking example of that because Avery Johnson essentially decided, forget about Dwayne. We're going to continue. They were doubling Shaq through game 5. I mean, Dwayne was getting to line 30 times, and they were still doubling Shaq. That is not happening with Zoe. To me, that's the big difference between the two of them. Now, defensively, I'm with you. I was never a huge fan of Shaq as a defender in a lot of ways because his energy, Zoe's energy is second to none. They don't win that championship probably in Dallas without him because of what he did. But to me, as far as building a team around someone, I think you would have had an easier time with Shaq. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed. And here's the thing. It's not like Shaq was a slouch on defense. He averaged over 2 blocks a game, 2.3 blocks a game in that 04-05 season.
All right, we're not doing blocks as a defensive.
I mean,
because then what are you doing with Zoe? Like, are you serious? Like, Shaq's not.
Oh, come on! Space. But we know what Zoe did defensively. Okay, like we know.
But
we're not just going off of blocks.
Shaq was in the best shape of probably his career, like post first championship with the Lakers. Okay, like. Think about that for a second. He had not been that thin since he was in Orlando, maybe. He was an amazing defender that first year in Miami.
Let's chill with amazing. Like, listen, Shaq is my 3rd favorite player of all time after Dwayne and Magic Johnson.
Clearly not after this conversation.
Huh?
Clearly not after this conversation.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't listen. I love Zoe. But Lakers Shaq is one of my favorite players of all time. But I'm talking about 04-05 Shaq. I think we're overestimating when we say amazing defender. He was not an amazing defender here. He was never an amazing defender.
I disagree with that.
I think you're way overstating Shaq's defense if you want to call him amazing in a Miami Heat uniform at any point.
At any point?
Yes, 04-05 was his peak.
Oh my God, Alf! Go back and watch some games, dude. Go! Learn the game, like Spoon used to say on Twitter.
All right,
learn the game. All right, we've got to learn the game. All right, can we finish up with Alex so we can get to me being grilled here?
I'd rather be the Sixers.
Is there any other?
How many championships have the Heat won since I made that? How far have the Heat gone?
How far have the Sixers gone?
All right, can we get back to Alex's team?
The Sixers were one bounce away of going to the conference finals and probably go to the finals.
George,
where was the Heat?
George, do you have anything else for Alex's team?
No, I like Alex's team. I think it's way better than Alf's team, shitty-ass team.
All right, and now we're going to our next sponsor. Our next sponsor is Luis Peters State Farm. It's an agency representing the #1 auto and home insurer in the entire United States. There's more than 60 years combined experience in the insurance industry. These are local agents that understand South Florida's unique market. They've got access 24/7. Obviously, the walk-in right now, not really a great idea, but call in or click in. You can do that at luispeters.com or you can call 305-275-5585. There's personalized service tailored to each and every customer. No cookie cutter solutions, based right here in Miami on Southwest 117th Avenue. But again, check out the website first. It's luispeters.com. All right. I'm on the spot here. I'll make a brief case, and then, George, you can put me on the hot seat here. I built my team to get out and transition and run these teams. And to me, LeBron James at the 4 in Miami was the highest level of LeBron James in his career. When they put him at the 4, his numbers were insane. You put space around LeBron, and you put active defenders around LeBron, and he goes to another level. So that's why I've put Eddie and Glenn Rice in the starting lineup. Eddie gives you a secondary ball handler. Goran Dragic, I think, as a spot-up shooter with LeBron would be terrific. Defensively, Bam and LeBron are going to be able to switch everything. If you get peak LeBron defensively, you're not going to be able to handle that on the defensive end. I know I'm a little bit small, which is why even with PJ Brown as a backup, playing the 4 or the 5, which is why I got Birdman, who I think can play with. We've seen his chemistry with LeBron, the vertical spacing. Antoine Walker can slide in at the 4 and let LeBron play the point. So to me, LeBron's really my backup point guard. And then Dan Marley, James Posey have proven they're big-time clutch defenders and clutch shooters, guys who've done it at the highest level. And then I've got GP for experience and to take Dragic off the floor when he's getting cooked defensively. What's wrong with my team?
Look, I liked your draft with your starters. I thought Alex had the best draft with the starters. I thought you were a close second. I think you wiped the floor with everybody when it came to the next groupings, mostly based on fit. I can poke holes in Alex's fit, particularly with some of those guys on the bench. I mean, Dion bleeping Waiters. I mean, get the hell out of here. But every one of your guys works. And if we're playing the modern game, I actually like PJ and Birdman as your big men. And let's face it, if you wanted to go small, Antoine Walker could play the 5. Like Udonis and Antoine Walker in the 2006 NBA Finals in Game 6 were intertwined playing the 4 and 5 position at times. So I think that if you wanted to go super duper small, like you could play him there potentially even too. Not that you need it because you got Bam, but you have a guy like James Posey who is battle tested, great defense. Like you can put him on. I mean, maybe not 2s, but you could definitely put him on 3s and 4s for sure. Same with Marley. You can kind of play him on all the wing positions, even 4s. Maybe it depends on how small the other team goes. I think that you just have the best fit of all those rosters. The only big question mark I have is Eddie Jones going to have a vomit game where he scores 3 points in the Game 6 of one of your big playoff games? Like that to me is my biggest question with you. And even look, I think Goran has some holes defensively, but if we're getting peak Goran, you're talking about a guy who, I don't know, 65 to 70% at the rim and putting pressure on the rim, who shoots decent enough from 3, like pretty good, I would say, from 3. Some nights even really good. We know what Glenn Rice would be in this era. I mean, he'd be, I don't know, Klay Thompson-esque, right?
The best shooter, the best elite, the best high-level shooter who has other aspects to his game that LeBron would have ever played with, in my opinion.
Correct. Like he would be an incredible fit with him. I love Bam with him too. Yeah, look, I think your team fits the modern day game best. Better than Alf's slow plotting team. Better than Alex's team once we get into the what? What did you say?
Cycling could move.
He can move on offense.
Cycling could move.
On offense, the spin doctor, baby. But Alex's team, once we start getting into the depth portion of it, I think can't go. And you're right. I think that your team can run. Your team can play the half court too because you've got enough shooting, you've got enough size, you've got the balance of the roster. I don't have a lot of criticism for your team, and Lord knows I came into this wanting to criticize you the most.
Yes, I know you did. Yes.
So I unfortunately don't have a lot. I didn't expect to – like when you asked me to do this a week or two ago, I expected, to be honest with you, to be most critical of Alex because he's so young, and I felt like he would probably do a worse job.
That's what I was
because of just youth and inexperience. But – man, I thought you did a really good job. Alf, I was actually stunned that you did as poorly as you did. Like, I thought you would do so much better than this roster.
The only pick – see, here's the thing. The only pick that you don't agree with me on is the Shaq and Zoe one.
Right, but that changes a lot. That changes a lot.
I know, but but here's the thing. It's and this is what I've argued with, and there's a lot of people that agree with me, that peak Zoe in Miami is better than peak Shaq in Miami.
Nope.
And that's that is the crux of the argument. If you like,
do you believe? Let me ask you this: do you believe in defensive win shares as a measurement? I'm just curious.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, if you don't, that's fine. But they're not that far apart in their 2 peak years that we're talking about with the Miami Heat.
04, 05, and 2000.
99, 2000. Not that far. One is 4.6. The other one's 5.6. On defensive win shares alone, and a great block by Chris Bosh, and we're going to a Game 7. Sorry, just a side note there.
I'm watching as well.
So I don't think that there's as big a defensive gap.
Well, I don't think there's as big offensively there's a gap.
There's a huge gap.
But, I mean, if you look at the two players and you look even at the percentages and you look at how much Shaq was a much higher percentage and he scored about 3 more points a game. in a different era where we're talking about the late 2000s where people were scoring 82 to 80. It was 83-82 Knicks versus Heat. You know what I mean? So when you're talking about what Zoe did offensively that year as a center, as a guy with with his back to the basket, I mean, he was offensively dominant for that time.
Okay, but Shaq was a 16% assist percentage guy. Zoe was under 9. That's not a small difference there. I also think that, as Ethan pointed out, I think that you changed the way you played everything when you played Shaq. That wasn't the case with Zoe. Zoe was actually Shaq that year was a better offensive rebounder by percentage available to him than Zoe was by 3 percentage points. He was better than him defensive rebound percentage as well, and obviously total rebound percentage.
I guess I would not want to play that style of game in today's game where I would run things like I don't want to run things through Shaq in 04-05 Shaq. Now, if we're talking about first year Lakers Shaq, yeah, I'd run everything through him.
Oh,
I wouldn't want to run things in today's game through 04-05 Shaq.
Go only if you have to, but you could because no one could defend him. None of these rosters has anyone that can defend him.
Let's move to that because I feel like we're doing the Zoe Shaq argument here in every break. All right, so let's get to that because I think that's important, and then I think in the last part here, since it seems like you've eliminated Alf, we should have a direct competition between my teams and Alex's team. No,
you're like the Jill Stein of this.
No, you can stay. You could actually wait. Tulsi Gabbard. You can actually weigh in on this a little bit later.
I'd rather have the rest of my night, but
well, let's get to this then and stop debating Shaq and Zoe at every turn. Okay, here, let's get to the key players on every team and who would defend them. All right, because I think that matters.
Go, let's do it.
All right, so okay, let's start with Shaq. How would Alf's team and how would my team handle Shaq in Europe? Because that is my biggest concern as I'm looking at all these rosters. Is that because I feel for Bam basically.
Good luck.
Well, look, clearly I don't believe any of the teams can defend him. But if there was a team that could defend him best, it would be Al's team because of the combination of Zoe and Bosh, and he's got height, right? Like Steve Smith is not small; he's 6'8". Jimmy is 6'5", but he's a smart defender and a savvy defender, and he's got guys he can throw at him. Brian Grant, UD, Cycly, though he wanted to play Brian Grant at the 3.
Actually, UD defended Shaq really well through the years, actually, before they played together. So, yes.
Yeah,
I would
so
agree
he's got – Al's team is probably
so did Brian Grant. Actually, you did draft Shaq, but you have the most guys to throw at Shaq. That's true.
Right.
Brian Grant defended him
except for Roddy Cycly, of course. We're not doing that.
I don't think any of them can actually defend peak Shaq. But you have the most guys to throw at him. So I like that matchup. As far as like Dwayne's concerned, man, I don't know. Maybe LeBron is the best equipped to guard Dwayne. Jimmy a little bit.
I'm going to throw Posey on Dwayne some.
Yeah, a little bit.
His length would give him.
Yeah, his length would give him some problems. But Posey's like a longer, slower version of Rip Hamilton. If like Rip was there, then I think that like Rip gave Dwayne all sorts of trouble. In a lot of ways.
Yeah. Dwayne's acknowledged that, actually.
Yeah. But I don't feel like Posey is Rip Hamilton. Like, I think he's a good defender, but I don't think he's good enough to defend.
Well, I'd start Eddie on him, and I don't feel great about that.
Young Steve Smith. Young Steve Smith.
Maybe a little bit, but he could. Steve
Smith was a very good defender.
You would put Jimmy on Dwayne. You would put Jimmy on Dwayne.
Jimmy would be the best
against. Oh yeah. Against Alex's team.
Alex's team, you would put Jimmy on Dwayne and put Steve Smith on.
Now, if against your team, I put Jimmy on LeBron and I would put Steve Smith on Eddie Jones. But
right, you would have Steve Smith against Mashburn on Alex's team, I think.
And all of a sudden, Steve Smith's length doesn't matter against Mashburn.
Right.
Yes, it still does.
I don't know.
Not really.
It matters against guards.
Mash was not a driver, but Mash had this way of getting that turnaround jumper off from the baseline. Steve Smith. I think we're all underrating Steve Smith. I agree with Alf on that.
Oh no, Steve Smith's a great player.
Who became better in Atlanta than he was here. So I think we've got to think of that in context. And he was pretty good in Portland. And and other places, obviously.
He was not very good his second time around with the Heat because he was old already.
No, he was done by then. But
He scored
Atlanta
20
Steve
points a
Smith,
game
Atlanta
for
Steve
like 2
Smith
games.
was a legitimate all-star. He was a really good player and a very
He
good
was,
player,
yeah,
smart player. But yeah, I mean, I think with Dwayne, I don't love the Eddie Jones matchup. Not because Eddie's not a good defender, but I just think that Dwayne would probably cook Eddie. It probably happened a bunch in practice.
Yeah.
And obviously, I can't put Goran on him. I mean, Goran's going to guard Tim. I mean, Goran's going to guard. And so I can't really put Marley on Dwayne except to be physical with him at certain times. You know, I think he can give him trouble. But I would have to play Posey. I think with my team, the way my team is constructed, if Posey can make jumpers, then I'm going to play him ahead of Eddie a lot, actually. Because
you can't put Posey on Dwayne, though.
Nah, I mean, maybe for like a few possessions, not regularly. I agree.
I don't have a great option. All right, so let's get to the other one then. Who the hell is
LeBron?
Who's guarding LeBron on these? Well, right, LeBron might have to guard Dwayne some. You're right. But who's guard? And I could actually do that against Alex's team because I could put Rice on Mashburn.
Yep.
And I could put Eddie on Shane.
Yep.
Right.
Or right. Okay.
Man,
so
I would actually cross match and have Dragic cover Shane at times and just have Eddie go at Hardaway.
Eddie would go with Timmy.
Yeah.
Eddie would go with Timmy. Yeah, I could do that. So I have the versatility to play against just about anybody. The problem is going to be for me, and then I want to get to the LeBron matchup here. The problem for me,
if I start Lamar over Mashburn, though,
it creates more problems.
If I start Lamar,
it does.
It doesn't give you the spacing that Shane's going to give you, but it creates more problems.
But Lamar and Battier as opposed to
because here's the thing about Lamar, he's such a great passer. You know what I'm saying? Like, he gets the ball, he's whipping it around, he's moving it. Like, it creates another ball handler.
Well, you would have elite passing in that starting lineup with Shaq, Lamar, Timmy, and Dwayne. And Jamal wasn't a bad passer.
And even Nash. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Jamal was. I mean, so you have good passers there. But, okay, so let's get to this, though. Who's guarding LeBron on these teams?
Yeah, there's no easy answer.
You put Jimmy on. You put Jimmy.
Nobody.
Jimmy's going to be on LeBron, right?
Right. The answer is nobody, but it's Jimmy and Mashburn or Shane is my best guess.
Jimmy, Mashburn, Shane, Lil Steve Smith, but you're not going to stop LeBron. Like you don't have Kawhi, so I
think I've got a lot of big wing bodies. No, terrific defenders other than Battier who couldn't handle heat.
Yeah,
at his best.
I do like the potential of both teams trying to guard LeBron because again, Jimmy and Steve are smart, good defenders, and the same thing with Mash and Shane. And Mash has the girth, I think, to stay with LeBron, as opposed to the other three that I just mentioned. Though Shane clearly loved those kind of matchups, right? Like he loved trying to guard LeBron when LeBron was younger and loved guarding Kobe.
But this is Heat. This is Heat. This is Heat Shane, and Heat Shane was not Rocket Shane.
Yeah.
No, okay, so I know.
But who's guarding Bosh? Who's guarding Bosh outside of I guess Bam and Lamar?
I would have some trouble guarding. Well, no, because if you start with Zoe, Bosh, Jimmy, Shane, and J. Will, I would put Dragic on J. Will,
which is a wash.
Eddie probably on Jimmy, Rice on Steve Smith, and then I guess I would have to put LeBron on Bosh. I don't see another option, right? Because Bam would guard Zoe. I mean, I think again, but this is where I come down to. I don't want to do the Shaq Zoe thing again. But
here's what I would do.
But my biggest concern with Bam is guarding Shaq in the post.
Ethan, this is what I would do.
Yep.
If you're playing Alf's team, I would start PJ alongside Bam. And
that would be the way to go.
I would pull Dragic or pull Eddie out of the starting lineup.
Or Dragic, right, or Eddie, one or the other, and then insert PJ to guard either Bosh or Zoe with Bam.
Yes. Yeah. PJ always guarded up, always. Even though he wasn't that physically, he wasn't that like thick. He guarded up all the time.
But it goes back to my point that you have the most options.
Mm-hmm. And I think again in other situations, I think I can go with Antoine at the 4. And move LeBron down to the point and go big. I mean, not big in terms of my center, but throw out a lineup of Bam, Walker, Rice, Eddie, and LeBron. which, I mean, with everybody in that lineup can pass, okay, and is a skilled offensive player. So I just think I have a lot of options. All right, after the break, we've eliminated Alf. Is that right? We're going to have our finals.
Alf got swept.
All right, Alf
Swept. Oh my God.
Alf got swept out. And
Can I get off the call then?
No, you're gonna help us decide now. You have to sit there and watch. Like this
George, you're like this is what's happening. You're gonna have to be like the players when Pat Riley was clapping off the floor and they still had to watch the rest of that Chicago game.
Right. You're going to watch the rest of this take place here. Another of our great sponsors. It's another podcast. It's a little bit different from this one. It's called Lessons Via Leaders, which is a weekly podcast show where they interview a new entrepreneur, founder, or thought leader each week. Many of the guests are local leaders here in South Florida that have built huge businesses and fostered large communities and movements. Each show features a new guest that shares with the audience valuable lessons and learnings that they've amassed over their careers. You can find the Lessons Via Leaders podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else that you find this podcast. They also have a video version of each episode on YouTube. So check out the Lessons Via Leaders podcast. It's good enough that we would put it in this network. Might be better than this particular podcast. All right, let's get to the end of this. We've got a championship series here.
Yeah, let's hurry up because I'm starving. Let's go.
Yeah, we've got a 7-game series. We've got Spo's been eliminated, okay, because he was given a bad roster by his GM. So we've got Riley.
That's happened a few times actually in his career.
Right, exactly. We've got Riley coaching Alex's team. Hassan and Dion have already been suspended. They're already gone. We've got Stan.
Yeah, they didn't pass. Dion didn't pass the conditioning test.
That's right. We've got Stan coaching my team.
I like Stan. I didn't mention that part of it. I like Stan coaching your team. I heard you say about him and LeBron, but he is as creative a coach, offensively particularly, and we know how good he is on defense. I think that LeBron would be okay with him as long as Stan toned it down just a little bit.
How much though? That's my question.
A little bit, because I have a lot of respect for Vogel after this year. Like, he got LeBron to buy in, which, as we all know, is not easy. And I think that Stan's a better coach than Vogel, like, because of the offensive side of it. And because of that, I think that as long as Stan got buy-in from LeBron, I think that Stan would be great with LeBron.
I actually think my locker room is going to be much more harmonious than Alex's locker room, because I think these guys on this team would file in behind LeBron. I do have a couple of concerns that I'll raise about my own team from a chemistry perspective. I don't think I think LeBron would love Bam. Yeah.
GP would hate his minutes. Let's face it.
GP would think he was better. Goran. He would think he was better than Goran.
For sure.
I think LeBron would love Goran. I think LeBron would love playing with Rice. I think Eddie would drive LeBron crazy.
He loves Posey. We know that.
I said that on a previous pod. Like, I feel like Posey would get those minutes, and I also think LeBron would love Marley. Marley.
Mm-hmm. He'd probably not be so cool on Twan, but LeBron always has the one person on the roster that needs to be the J.R. Smith type, and Twan fits that.
Twan is that, and then he loves playing with Birdman. Right. So I think the only guys we'd have minutes problems with would be Gary would be upset with his minutes, mm-hmm. and maybe Twan would be upset a little bit with Roll. Right. PJ would fill in where he filled in, and I'm not worried about foul trouble problems, because I do think Birdman can play pretty significant minutes and can battle. He would battle Zoe and Shaq during his minutes. Yeah. So that's it. I look at Alex. Again, how Pat's just going to wave his magic wand, right? Like, that's just going to make. Okay.
No, it's not a magic wand, man. But it's like, out of all those three coaches, I absolutely wanted Riley to be the guy there. I think, like we said before, he's coached so many of these guys, and I think Dion and Hassan are obviously like, yes, we're laughing at jokes. They were really good in their prime, and I'm not worried about them acting up behind.
Really good? Let's slow down with really good on Dion.
No, really good as far as, the guys on the list, right? Like, you want to talk about Dion and Gary Payton. Who was better?
How is Anthony Mason not on one of these rosters? He made an all-star team.
I picked him by accident.
Well, Mace almost made our final 30. He was put in our round of 4 to get the 430th, but our audience is so young on Twitter that Jay Rich won that in a landslide. So he beat out Mason.
Man, I've given the audience so many props today on this. Voting. That's not a good one.
He beat out Jay Rich beat out him, Bruce Bowen, and Sherman Douglas, and then we did
the other two, but
we did have wild card picks, and when we went to the wild card picks, none of us picked him. The picks were I picked Posey, who I just thought was a better fit for my team.
Grant Long or Dion as your wild card pick?
Dion.
Dion.
Yeah, I would have gone with Mace there for sure.
Is that there was so many bigs on the?
You could have put Mace on LeBron.
You could have, but here was the question with Mason we talked about. You know how Mace got, or maybe
and Bosh too. You could have put him on Bosh.
You could put him on a lot of people. He's a physical player and he was a skilled player. But the problem with Mace was if Mace wasn't happy with his role, that was another issue. And we saw that happen in his All-Star season where he basically checked out when Zoe came back. So I'm wondering on that team, as much versatility as you have with Mashburn and Lamar, if Mason wasn't getting minutes, how that would look, and then you're adding another guy in the locker room who's combustible.
Alf, why didn't you? I mean, the problem was you took too many power forwards to begin with. Had you not taken 37 power forwards, you probably should have taken Mace.
He took Duncan.
There's so many bigs on the list, though.
Had Alf just taken some more wings instead of 37 power forwards and frontline players, he probably would have. Mace was such a versatile frontline player that would have been a better fit for him.
My 2 first reserve picks were Ray Allen and Mario Chalmers. At that point, the wings that were left were not it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't like a smorgasbord of like the greatest wings on earth.
That's an excellent usage of smorgasbord.
Okay, so like Shane Battier was gone, Dan Marley was gone, Caron Butler was gone. By the time after I picked Ray Allen, it came around and I got Rio. So my next pick was Udonis Haslem because I needed a backup. I needed a backup big, and peaking Udonis Haslem with the Heat is the shit. So when it came to the wild card, that's why I picked Duncan Robinson for shooting.
Right. Okay.
Like with me picking Anthony Mason at that point.
So basically, but who did you choose where you could pick? Like who got the first pick as to
he
where
chose to pick third. He chose to pick third.
Yeah,
well, no, Alex first chose to pick second.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? That's really dumb. I don't know how you ended up with such a good roster.
I chose to pick third because I wanted the Bosh Zoe front court.
Well, he picked second because he thought he wanted Dwayne and thought he was going to drop to him, and so why pick him first? And you move. I understood that. All right, so let's get to the final 2 teams here. And Alpha, I'm going to let you weigh.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you weigh in on this. All right.
Go.
So we've got a 7-game series. We've given the starting lineups. We've given the closing lineups. George is going to make the final decision. But Alf, looking at these 2 teams in a 7-game series, which of the 2 teams would you take, mine or Alex's?
If we were after the starters, I was gonna say I would have said Alex, but then when we go into the depth, and then when you start looking at what you can do as far as a closing lineup, I'm gonna have to go with Ethan. Alex's starting lineup is the best starting lineup, but when it comes to complete depth of an entire team, you have the depth, and I think Alex made some missteps in the reserves.
How is this depth going to burn me is my question, because like Gary Payton, I'm absolutely not worried about.
You have so many guys on your bench that you can't count on. Like outside of like Shane Battier, you're counting on like rookie Caron Butler.
Like I said,
you're counting on Dion Waiters, Hassan Whiteside. I mean, Grant Long is a good player, but Grant Long is like the less realized version of Udonis Haslem. Like
he's my 11th man. He's not going to be in the rotation unless Hassan acts up. But I think my thing is these guys are going to be playing 18 or less minutes for the most part under, other than like Lamar.
Yeah, but come on. We know, we know that benches matter. Like, let's not – first of all, also I don't like –
That's what I want. That's the question I want answered. Who's going to burn me from Ethan's bench? That's what I want to know.
I don't think it's a question of burning. I think
it's not burning. It's just being able to sustain for 48 minutes.
They're functional facilitators. The thing about Marley was the best ball mover that I think the Heat have ever had at the wing. Would you agree with that, George? Like with Dan, he just knew how to play. Like the ball popped. Like you could plug him into any situation. He and Posey to me are like they're low maintenance, tough.
Yes,
players.
I agree. And to Alf's point, I think that I just think you have better versatility and better better fit, right? Like, and I think that to me is the edge. And we're talking about Alex, the problem is that if we're projecting a 7-game series or whatever against these teams, like the benches, Alf's right, the benches are going to matter at some point over the course of a 7-game
My
series.
thing is, I don't think his bench is going to be able to actually sufficiently outplay my bench. Like, I don't think, like, let's say the two benches together, even if there wasn't staggering, I don't.
Yes, because they fit better.
Here's what when I look at Ethan's bench, and I think about a 7
coming from.
And I look about a 7-game a 7-game series. You have Gary Payne, James Posey, Dan
Even
Marley,
Antoine Walker.
You have so many guys that could come up with big games. You have guys with Antoine and Posey and Marley that could give you the same things on a game-by-game basis at times that Mash and Odom can give you. Like, those guys were really, really good in big games. So that's why when I look at Ethan has a bench that could just come in and just take over for a 6-minute stretch. You don't have that bench.
I don't see that at all. I think that's completely unfair because I don't think the ball handling is there. Ethan's only ball handlers are like LeBron and Goran. Everybody else,
dude, Gary Payton. What are we talking about?
You have Gary Payton and Antoine.
And you can run some through. You can run some offense through Antoine. You can run. They ran offense through Antoine. And we're forgetting. We haven't talked about him much at all. You can run offense through Bam. I mean, he just did it for 50 games. So, like, we haven't talked a lot about Bam, but like, I just think to me, LeBron and Bam together, man, like, I mean, he hasn't played with a big like that. Like, that's
it's going to be great.
All right. So are we deciding or what?
You decide. Alf gave you a recommendation.
Yes. I think a good series, like I said, I think Shaq may be him and LeBron are the two most dominant players, potentially, them and Wade. The fact that two of them are on the same team with Alex gives me the reason to believe it's a 7-game series. I just like the way your team fits better, Ethan. I just think it flows better. I think the chemistry's better. I think that guys have roles that are more defined potentially. I just think Ethan in a very nip and tuck 7-game series.
Stan Van Gundy, NBA champion, baby.
Finally! It should have happened for him.
All right. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks to George and Al for making the right decision here. Thanks to Al for leaving us the important players. We appreciate it.
And by the way, look at that. Alf and I agreed finally at the end.
I'd rather be Ethan's team. That's what you should both say. All right, Alex.
Can I change my pick to Alex's team?
I think this is a very representative job by Alex, considering his youth. I think he put.
Dude, I think Alex killed it. Right? He was like, I heard him say that the first team he actually watched was the team that won the first championship. Like,
right.
He incredible.
Did a great job, but that recency bias with Assad and Dion, it's just,
get out of here with that. That's where you lost.
18 minutes a game.
Oh,
they're both suspended. They're going to be suspended. All right. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Don't get under the blanket.
All right, we appreciate it. Thanks, George, for doing this.
I can't wait till Leif comes on. Can Leif judge these teams? I think Leif is going to be all on my side.
We're going to see. We're going to see who Leif picks. Eric Reed may judge the teams too. He's supposed to come on with us next week.
Oh, love it.
We'll see what happens.
I'm on the same episode.
I need Heat super homers that are going to pick Zoe over Shaq. That's what I need.
Right.
Sedano is way too
objective.
Yeah, exactly. You've been in LA too long.
To LA.
I was on the team where they won the championship. For God's
exactly.
sake. I was there.
Exactly. I don't like it. I need just a biased Heat homer who's going to be like, oh my God, I remember Steve Smith in '92.
Someone who's going to remember Zoe's teams falling short in the playoffs.
I need a guy who can remember Steve Smith in '92 is what I need. Like,
I remember Steve Smith vividly.
Yeah, but you're watching. It's different now. It's different.
We'll bring Fiorentino on. All right, enough.
Fiorentino, it's going to be all over my team.
Continue this.
Yeah, baby.
Off the air. Good night.
All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.